we begin tonight with the president and a plea to help his people. Today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy addressed the German parliament after attending a conference to gather support for rebuilding Ukraine. He made an urgent appeal for help rebuilding a power grid that's been battered by relentless Russian airstrikes. He also urged lawmakers to keep standing behind Kyiv.
Standing ovations in the parliament of one of Ukraine's biggest supporters. While the situation on the ground in Ukraine remains critical, the Ukrainian president expressed his hope for victory to German lawmakers.
Some may have the impression that Putin is going to be there forever, and there will not be an end to the war. But that is not the case. It's an illusion. It's an illusion that can be destroyed by leadership and decisions and the successes we will jointly achieve. Together with you, Germany. And Ukraine will always be grateful for this.
He also issued a stark warning against making peace with Vladimir Putin.
If somebody were to try, Putin would always destroy any hope of coming to an agreement.
Parliament was well attended, though many members of the leftist BSW and the far-right AfD boycotted the speech due to their pro-Russian sympathies. Zelensky's parliament address followed a conference in Berlin focusing on Ukraine's reconstruction. This could potentially be financed by frozen Russian assets if leaders reach an agreement. Zelensky did not end the day empty-handed. He secured a promise of additional German ammunition for Ukrainian weapons. This pledge was made as he visited Ukrainian troops in Germany who are being trained on surface-to-air Patriot missile systems. They are crucial to enable Kyiv to locate and shoot down Russian missiles, which is also what makes them a target. Germany has delivered 2 so far and pledged to send 1 more. Too few for Zelensky.
If it's possible to bring to Ukraine more equipment to defend assistance, I will support.
For now, Germany will only deliver additional missiles for the ones already in Ukraine.
And joining me here in the studio now is Olga Stefanishyna. She is the Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine. It's good to have you with us. Let me start by just asking you about this conference. Is it living up to your expectations?
Well, thank you so much. I mean, it's fantastic that ahead of the G7 meeting and the peace summit, President Zelensky in this day in Berlin, this conference has a very particular angle, and this has targeted to reach the goal of unlocking the private investments and loans to private companies in Ukraine, which is a key to financing the defense sector in Ukraine, the key driver of Ukraine's economy. This is the first time since the beginning of the full-scale war where we bring this incentives to every part of Ukraine, and it's very important ahead of the G7 meeting when the decisions on granting the sustainable financial support to be held. But I will start by quoting Chancellor Scholz over his opening statements today is the best recovery is the recovery which is not needed. That's why, of course, everybody are concentrated to mobilize necessary efforts to air defense in Ukraine.
Germany has become a major weapon supplier to Ukraine. Do you have any reason to think that that could change?
Well, I think no, and my position is having a serious background because of a number of consultations held, because of the security commitment signed, but also because of a serious political commitment to be undertaken over the G7 meeting and the upcoming NATO summit. The stronger role on securing the financial and military support of the global players will be held and set in the documents, and Germany has the biggest interest in that, as you've said, as the major military supporter of Ukraine and the major financial contributor to that.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about NATO in just a moment. Today, President Zelensky, he addressed the German parliament, and there was a sizable number of lawmakers who boycotted his speech. Lawmakers from the far right, from a populist party, who were quoted as saying, "He is beggar Zelensky. He's come here to escalate the war and asking us to use our tax money to pay for welfare for Ukrainian refugees. I mean, these are lawmakers. These are people who speak for certain parts of German society. How does that make you feel?
I think there's still many things boiling as the European elections has just ended a couple of days ago. So there's a fresh energy to make different statements. But the practice we really have to judge not by statements, by the actions. And the actions are following that German from every region of it is now represented at the recovery conference, and hundreds of agreements has been signed at different levels. And Germany and German companies, German people has become the largest supporters of Ukraine. So we really put the line between statements and actions speak in favor of supporting the democracy and the freedom which we are now fighting for.
Let me ask you about your job. And your title is Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration. I mean, in plain English, that means EU membership and NATO membership. Those are the goals, right? How are you doing in the job?
Well, I'm pretty good, and I'm really proud of being in a position where I'm in charge of the accession process, not only the integration, but the actual accession. And we're ahead of a couple of weeks, far from making the decision to start the actual accession talks. And I'm particularly proud that it was a personal position of the Chancellery and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to put a specific angle to this conference related to German lead on Ukraine's accession talks. It's not the case for the NATO part, whereas there is still a lot of hesitation in Germany. And but a part of it, we're preparing a number of very practical decisions for a Washington summit, and Germany's backing them up.
Speaking of Washington, I have to ask you, since I have you here, there is a U.S. presidential election this year, and it is possible that we could have a second Donald Trump presidency. He has made it known that he's not the biggest fan of NATO. And he said that if he were president in 24 hours, the war between Ukraine and Russia would be over. Does that keep you up at night, that possibility?
Well, first of all, Russian missile attacks are keeping us up at night. And the light that we have only at night to keep us up at night, because we can do the laundry and do our house stuff at night. So this is what keeps us up at night. At the same time, again, we're judging by actions. And as I remember, President Trump has been urgently calling on a stronger European effort to invest in the European defense. And I really see that this is happening with the new European Commission, which will boost European defense industry. So I'm sure that there will be a lot of solid ground for his messages. Let
me ask you, before we let you go, what would be your message to people here in Europe, Western Europe, and also in North America, who say that they are suffering from Ukraine war fatigue, that the war is grinding their nerves, it's getting old? What's your message to them?
I understand, but despite all of this tiredness and depression, I'm really grateful to every citizen of every country who has backed up its government and parliament to support Ukraine, to support our resilience and our ability to live in our country, but also to support those Ukrainians who had to flee the war and find their shelter in the European capitals. So we are grateful to everybody who remembers about Ukraine and speaks about that. That's very important.
Olga, Stefanishyna, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us, and all the best to you, and come back and talk with us again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Russia's invasion is now in its third year, and there are no signs of a ceasefire on the horizon, but Ukraine's shattered energy grid can't wait. People need power. And as Zelensky told German lawmakers today, his people, their soldiers, need more weapons too. Here is part of Zelensky's speech before Parliament earlier today.
Do you and I have any aim other than peace? No. Do we have any other continental dream besides a peaceful Europe? No. Do we have any other duty than to protect our people, our Europe, and the rules-based international order? No. But Russia has different goals and dreams. Russia is standing alone against all of us. So, we all have to force Russia to change. And it is possible. Because there is no wall that cannot be brought down. Our leadership and the will of Ukrainians should work for the sake of peace, for the sake of Europe, for the sake of life. And so it will be. Europe will be a continent without war.
Well, I'm joined now by Rudik. She's a member of the Ukrainian parliament. She's leader of the political party Populist in Kyiv. Kira, it's good to have you back on the program. You know, we're talking about this conference that's taking place here in Berlin about Reconstruction. And I mean, that it's personal for you, right? Because you were telling me that you're actually in the middle of a power outage in Kyiv right now.
Hello, Brent. Thank you so much for having me. Yes, indeed. Same as many of my fellow Ukrainians throughout the country right now, we are experiencing energy outages. We have been experiencing them for a month right now since Russian brutal attacks destroyed the majority of our energy production. And as of right now, there is no quick fix for that, and we can only rely on our partners to provide additional defense for us and provide additional capacities of energy so that we can survive through the summer, but most important, that we can survive through the winter.
And you and I were able to talk tonight, you were telling me, because you've got a diesel generator giving you electricity right now, right?
Right. It's actually not something that every Ukrainian can have, but because I'm living in the home, I can have diesel generator and have some support for my internet and for some lights. But actually, it's very tough everywhere, and we are only purchasing diesel generators for hospitals and kindergartens to make sure that our critical infrastructure still has an ability to get electricity when needed.
You know, and considering the realities that you and your fellow Ukrainians are facing, I want to ask you about something that happened here today in Berlin. A sizable number of lawmakers from the far right and the populist left, they boycotted the speech that was given by your president, President Zelensky, today in front of the German parliament. And they even said that Zelensky is a beggar asking for weapons and welfare. What do you think when you hear comments like that?
Well, you know, I'm an oppositional party leader, and I can tell you more than anyone that president is a legitimate one, and we have heard Russian narratives trying to diminish him and trying to break our unity that we have had since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. We as a country have one goal: to survive and to win the war. And for that, we have one president, and it is Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and he is representing our country right now in Berlin. I want to make it very clear that political ambitions right now do not matter for us. We need to get through this very simple thing, to stay alive, to have ability to defend our homes, and to have ability to provide to our people. And this is why it's very upsetting when we hear about such things from fellow lawmakers from Germany. Yeah. We know that Germans mostly support us, and we hope that lawmakers represent people who support us.
Kira, Germany is a major weapons supplier to Ukraine now. Do you have any reason to think that that could change?
You know, we have gone through, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, through many no's from many of our allies. But right now, we think we are at the point where we can get long-term trust and long-term agreements on getting us the necessary weapons, ammunition, and we see from Germany that this is what's going to happen. We have a security agreement, and we hope that certain political changes that may happen, that it wouldn't influence ability to support Ukraine in our fight. At least this is our high hopes.
Kira, you and I, we've spoken many times. We've talked about your hopes of your country joining the European Union. Eurosceptic political parties, far-right parties, they are gaining ground in France, Italy, Austria, and here in Germany. The original core of the European Union is now home to political forces that think that the EU is part of the problem, not the solution. I know you've dedicated your political career to anchoring Ukraine firmly in the West, hopefully in the EU. What goes through your mind when you see what is happening right here?
I think people are scared. They do not have a good solution to the questions like security and future. And I think it's very important to operate with the facts when you are talking to people and when you're building your political career. Again, here in Ukraine, we are the living proof of the importance of the unity, and that you can only fight for your future and see any kind of future if you are surrounded by the allies and if you are acting together. And I want everyone who is concerned, who is afraid, to hear this. We here are saying that you can only survive if you're acting together. So let's stay together, figure out the issues that may arise, but move forward together. I don't see any other way.
Kira Rudik, with that, I think we can say thank you. And as always, we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. And we wish you all the luck with your power. And I hope that you don't have to rely on a diesel generator for much too longer. Thank you.